Celtic clinched their second successive Scottish Premiership title under Ange Postecoglou at the weekend. Kyogo Furahashi's 30th goal of the season, helping them overcome 10-man Hearts at Tynecastle, an 11th title in 12 years. And with us to digest the weekend and how things are going for Celtic clearly well under Ange Postecoglou is Tom English of BBC Sport. Morning, Tom. How are things?
Good morning. Very well indeed.
Thanks for joining us. So it's perhaps no surprise that Celtic have clinched the Scottish Premiership title given their total dominance so far this season, and an impressive way to clinch it out, and probably makes sense that Kyogo Furuhashi was the man who got in the score sheet again. He's been brilliant.
He has, yeah. Postecoglou has made many very impressive signings. Kyogo is probably the pick of them. Goals machine, would have scored a lot more goals last season, but he missed a good chunk of the league season through injury. He's just a kind of blur of movement, really, and he scores all sorts of goals. He could score crackers from outside the box, and he can score the type of goal, that scrappy old goal that he got against Hearts at the weekend. He's been terrific, for the current generation, the younger generation of Celtic fans, the kids and young teenagers. He is the guy that excites them, just like Henrik Larsson was for the previous generation, or Jimmy Johnston, this generation past. I'm not saying he's Jimmy Johnston, nobody is. But for kids, this is the guy that does it for them. He's such an exciting player.
So it's a 53rd league crown overall for Celtic. They've still got the motivation to continue with the season. Of course, a fifth treble in 7 seasons is the carrot on the end of the stick when they play Inverness Caledonian Thistle. That's the Scottish Cup final on June 3rd, so they will have the motivation to continue. Ironic, Tom, Tynecastle was where Postecoglou's league tenure began with a defeat, 2-1 defeat a couple of years ago. It's quite hard to fathom how far he has taken this side since then, because of course when he first took the job, it was a surprise to say the least, and an unknown entity.
Yeah, I mean, people look at it in the Scottish League and they go, it's a 2-horse race. You only have to beat Rangers. That's true. We've got all the financial advantages over 10 of the other 11 clubs in the league. That's true. But the context is everything here. Postecoglou took over a club that was in turmoil. They just lost the league by 25 points to Rangers. They'd sacked Neil Lennon. Peter Lawwell, the chief executive, who was there for 20 years, left. The supporter unrest was off the scale. Protesting, really, really bitter protests outside Celtic Park nearly every weekend. They had this months-long pursuit of Eddie Howe, who was their first choice. They thought they were going to get him, and then he said no. I couldn't explain how angry the supporters were. Banners outside the ground, sack the board. One of them infamously said, "Shoot the board." So he's come into this maelstrom, and the whole team needed to be rebuilt. They had a lot of loan players, a lot of players who weren't putting it in anymore, who wanted to leave. Odson Edward and these types of guys. He had a massive job on his hands, on the pitch and off the pitch. They replaced Lawwell with Dominic Mackay as chief executive. He lasted 2 months and he left. So it was chaotic. He comes in, he starts making all these signings, one after another, hits the bullseye. And before we know it, they're playing this really good brand of football. They're winning. They win the league. They win the League Cup last season. They're going to win, unless Inverness can cause the upset to beat all upsets, they're going to win a treble this season. And it all makes sense. And his backstory makes it even more special. Because this is a kid who came from Athens to Melbourne when he was 5 with his family because of the military junta in Greece. His father lost his business. They arrived in Melbourne with 2 suitcases. They didn't speak the language. They didn't have anywhere to stay. And from there, he's built, and what he had with him was a love of football. So his own story, the immigrant story, there's a great symmetry with the history of Celtic. So that's why, for reasons of trophies, but also his backstory, that's why everybody at Celtic worships the man.
It's his tactics as well as his style of play, but also his transfers, Tom, because everyone has spoken about his knowledge of the Japanese market and how Celtic have clearly benefited from that. But when he originally came in, I mean, when you look at it now, they've no director of football. He has complete control, not quite to the level maybe of Alex Ferguson at the peak at Manchester United, but not far off. Like he literally has the trust and faith of the board and everyone involved in the club, and maybe he's earned that respect because of his dealings in the transfer market.
Completely. Like he has, excuse me, he spent a lot of money, but the net spend is very, very small, because the Celtic are a very well run club. So they sold Odsonne Edouard for a lot of money. They sold Christopher Ayer for a lot of money. They sold one or two others for decent money. And for that money, plus another maybe 8 or 9, 10 million, they've built this brand new squad. 90% of his targets have come straight into the team. Not just the squad, not squad fillers. Serious players at the heart of what he's doing now. The team that clinched the championship on Sunday, 16 players got game time, 13 of them were signed by him, and it would have been 14 if Alistair Johnston, the Canadian right back, was fit. So that gives you an idea of how he's rebuilt. A lot of Japanese players have come in, and they've it's a bit of a cliche, they play the Celtic way. The Celtic way is kind of winning, right, first of all, but winning with a bit of class, with a bit of style. And Farahashi can do that, Hatate can do that, Maeda, and then he brings in Jota, he brings in Abada, a very young player. They're all contributing, Matt O'Reilly, and he's getting them for relatively small money. So he's finding these gems that are going straight into the team. I mean, the Japanese lads, they hit the ground running immediately. There was no settling in period. And these are guys who've come in. They don't know this. They don't know the city. They don't know the country. They don't know the league. They don't know the club. They don't know the language. And yet, a bit like Postecoglou himself, they immediately have an impact. So it's very impressive. And you got to look at it in context as well. You know, like Brendan Rodgers, you look back to Brendan Rodgers and his invincible season of 2016, 2017, and everyone thought, myself included, we'll never see kind of a points to league points total or a goals total like that again. Postecoglou's team could surpass both this season if they keep winning for the last 4 games. Rodgers got 106 points and 106 goals. It's within Postecoglou's team to beat that, which is incredible, really.
Pat Nevin was on the show last night, Tom, and he was talking about there being 1 or 2 nibbles, was how he phrased it, at Ange in the market. And I can't help but feel, listening to everything you've said, you used the word worship from the fans earlier on, the stability of the club, the Fergie-like grip that he has in the club. These are attractive things to Premier League owners, and I'm sure there's plenty of them looking at him. And look, I also get there's a tension there between, it's not to raise the question of whether Celtic or Leicester or whoever you want to pick are a bigger club, but the nibbles will be there. He's an attractive prospect right now.
Yeah, these clubs aren't playing. I mean, he's been linked, I think, with about 8 or 9 Premier League clubs. Now, linked as in, is this a lot of tabloid nonsense or is there actual genuine interest? Who knows? But they'll know who he is for sure. And like, you look at, I mean, like Celtic fans, they are talking about this. Of course they are. They're almost resigned to the fact that he will leave probably soon. If they got another season out of him, they'd probably be happy enough with that. They'd want more, but they live in the real world. I think if he goes on, and Celtic will go straight into the Champions League group stage now, if he does something in that, will he be there the season after next? You probably think unlikely, but he has always made a point, you know, because he achieved success in Australia. He achieved success in with the national team in Australia in the World Cup. Got into the World Cup. Moved on to Brisbane Roar. He won the league there. Yokohama Marinos. He won the league there. He's doing great things at Celtic. But Celtic were the one in this side of the world that took a chance on him. I don't know if he was in for jobs in England before and he got turned down or ignored, but he feels a huge sense of appreciation to Celtic. And he's never really engaged with the chat because everyone's asking him, oh, you know, what about all this supposed interest from England? He's never really engaged with that. He's a very shrewd, very smart, very respectful guy, actually. And it goes back to his background, that he really does appreciate this opportunity that he was given.
This seems like a ridiculous thing to ask, given, as you said, the fact that he can surpass that points total and goals total of the Brendan Rodgers Invincibles team. But if you were to put a hat on as a Ange detractor and come up with reasons why maybe clubs wouldn't look towards him, I've heard the argument mentioned that maybe his bringing young players through that brilliant Celtic academy maybe hasn't happened as much as some Celtic fans would like to see. His European record probably leaves a bit to be desired as well, you'd imagine. Over the last couple of years, that's been one issue that Celtic fans have been hoping to address. Are those things that are a concern at all in terms of Ange's managerial tenure?
Well, I mean, the young players, yeah, true. Very few young players have got a look in at Celtic. I understand why they have to win every week. They have to. And I still think that they can do that by bleeding in a couple of young people. He hasn't done it. He hasn't done it, maybe A, because maybe they're not there, or B, maybe he just doesn't think they're up to it. I don't know. But it hasn't happened. Let's see next season if it does happen a little bit more. European, it was his first crack at it. He was in a tough group with Real Madrid. I thought, even though they didn't get many points, I think they played a lot of good football. They created a huge amount of chances, even against Real Madrid, home and away. They created. So I wouldn't hold that against him. People were saying, "Oh, you need to be more pragmatic. You're going up against Real Madrid. You need to be more defensive." And he said, "No. Well, if we're more defensive, we learn nothing. We don't learn anything." So he kept true to his own beliefs, attacking football. And I think they probably did learn stuff. But the truth of that will be next season in the Champions League. I think there will be pressure on him to deliver points next season, for sure. If he does that, then I'm not sure he'll be at Celtic for much longer. I always got the sense with Brendan Rodgers that he was fluttering his eyelashes at clubs down south. I always got that impression with him. I have not got that impression with Ange Postecoglou at all. I'm not saying he won't go. I think if he keeps going the way he is, I think he will go. He will have no choice but to go, because he'll get a juicy offer in a bigger market. Maybe not a bigger club, because there's not that many in Britain bigger than Celtic. But these clubs, the Leicesters and all these clubs, they're in a bigger market. So I suspect he will probably go at some point if he continues his rate of progress. But I don't get a sense that he's in a rush.
And yeah, as you say, that style of play, that high octane style of football. When you look at teams like Porto and Bruges this year making the last 16 of the Champions League, there's no reason why Celtic can't be among those teams to progress and do that as well. Like when you look at the Scottish Premiership table, though, Tom, and I have it open in front of me, so a comfortable win for Celtic. Rangers a distant second, so 34 games played at the moment. But even if you look at the gap between Rangers and Aberdeen in third, like Rangers are 29 points clear of Aberdeen in third. They're 49 goals better off than Aberdeen. So is that complete disparity and lack of competition in the Scottish Premiership a problem, even from I guess from a commercial perspective and getting people interested and involved and eyeballs watching the Scottish Premiership? Is it seen as an issue?
No, well, look, I mean, of course it's an issue. There's only two teams every season can potentially win the league. That's been a problem for 30 years. The attendances at matches in Scotland are terrific. Per capita, it's one of the most watched leagues in European football in terms of people coming through the gate. So there's not a massive issue there. It's just a lack of competition, and Aberdeen, there's a lot of good clubs. Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, they're all doing a lot of good things, but the financial gulf is just impossible to breach that. And Aberdeen have rallied. They've had a good last few months, and they're a good side. But it's impossible. I mean, you can't. It's like expecting Nottingham Forest to be going toe to toe with Man City. It's just financially, it can't be done. There's an interesting thing about Rangers, and they've kind of been in turmoil for much of the season. They're currently on 89 points. 89 points would have won the league in two of Brendan Rodgers' 3 seasons at Celtic. Now, I know for the third season, he was only there for maybe 3/4 of it, and then he left to Leicester. But 89 points, that would have won 2 of those leagues. So Rangers have done okay by that standard. It's just that Celtic have been kind of unforgiving in terms of the way they go about winning matches. They've shown very, very little weakness domestically.
Yeah, ruthless. And look, we'll keep an eye on the remainder of the season. As we said, that Scottish Cup final upcoming, and Celtic face Rangers in the final Old Firm derby of the season at Ibrox at 12:30.
Nice place to be going after a title in the bag. It's like they could not. I don't know what they would like to hang on a couple of days and get it done up there, but I mean, it's.
Well, did they do
sweet.
the clap onto the pitch?
I'm sure.
Does that happen at Ibrox?
Imagine.
Surely not, Tom.
If Rangers applaud Celtic onto the pitch, I'm going to look up and I'm going to see pigs flying. It won't be happening. They'll be doing something as Celtic are walking onto the pitch.
I can
it won't
imagine.
be applause.
Yeah, I don't think pigs are going to fly at Ibrox this Saturday for sure. Tom, brilliant stuff as always. Thanks a million for hopping on.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks. Brilliant. Tom English there of BBC Sport, reflecting on Celtic's Scottish Premiership win and their utter dominance in Scottish club football.